DeFi Kingdoms, where you can summon heroes, trade with other players, quest, and fight challenging enemies in a fantasy world brought to life in pixel art animation. Command your legion, claim your legacy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's AMA with DeFi Kingdoms. The answer to the question, when is now? If you were asking when AMA, the answer is now. As always, excited to be here for another great round of AMA fun. We will have Dreamer here with us here in just a minute as well, but we are going to go ahead and kick things off. Before we jump into updates and then questions after that, just wanted to take a minute and say, welcome back, Fox. Good to see you, and hope that your travels went well. If you have anything you want to share, feel free.
No, just, it's strange to say that I'm back because I've actually been here the whole time, but obviously in another time zone. But still been, sort of doing all of the coding world stuff that I do. But it is nice to be back here on AMAs and saying hi to everyone and answering questions again. So, yeah, thanks. Happy to be back.
Yeah, welcome home would be a more accurate statement.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
All right. So jumping into some updates. First things first, we are going to jump over to Magnus to talk about expeditions.
Hey everybody. So if you guys noticed from yesterday, we were doing some contract upgrades. It took us a little bit longer than we planned on, but we got them all deployed. Currently doing some mainnet testing, just making sure everything's looking good, getting the right rewards, just checking all that. So Winston's been working hard at that, but everything in terms of contracts are deployed. And yeah, just apologies for all the issues with that yesterday, but we got that squared away. And yeah, if all goes well, if Winston gives us the green light, we'll be deploying expeditions today. So yeah, still waiting on kind of the final confirmations and stuff, but yeah, just stay tuned for more on that.
Awesome. Thank you, Magnus. Super excited for that release. Tentatively a little later today. Speaking of really cool things and releases and some other things that are coming up, wanted to kick the mic over to Hubert to talk about what's coming next.
Oh my goodness. Let me see. So now I forgot what we were talking. What was on? Oh yes, that. Sorry, I had to go double check our little notepad. Hey guys. Yes. So we will also be. Man, I really feel unprepared for this, but we have a lovely little graphic to share with you. We're basically very close to being done with our balancing of traits, and while it's still possible that things might change a little bit more before they're released, we feel like it's in a good enough spot to where we can kind of release an updated list of how those traits work. Some of them have changed, some have not really changed since we initially released those. So I guess be on the lookout for a graphic. I'm not sure when exactly that was going to, if it's after this AMA or now, but there should be a graphic soon.
So I'm going to throw them up on the AMA right now with the disclaimer that you probably aren't going to be able to read them very well. I am going to both Discord announce and tweet them immediately following the AMA. So here's a preview, but don't stress it. Here's the passives. Hubert, I don't know if you want to say anything about them as they're shown, but feel free if you do.
Let's see, we did change last stand quite a bit. So there's a little bit more text there. Good luck reading it in this short period of time while it's visible. And let's see, I think a few other things have been adjusted. Foresight, I think, got a little bit of a nerf. And let's see, I think that's all. Everything else I'm not sure changed too much. And for the active traits, you can see all the icons we got for all of those. Great work from Second Best Dad on those, I believe. And on the animations for those, that was our artist Inkmouth who did did the visual effects for those when you see those. Let's see, is there anything else about this? We also made some adjustments to some of these that like exhaust days, explosion was one that changed quite a bit, and stun as well, like the damage that those deal were adjusted somewhat. And I think, let's see, the rest of them, I'm not sure how much those other ones changed.
Awesome. Thank you, Hubert. I know those were probably hard to read. I know a lot of you probably just took screenshots, which is fine, but we will be posting those immediately after this AMA as well. So don't worry too much about it. You will be able to see them, read them, download them, etc. Anything else you wanted to mention about traits?
Just that I'm excited to have them. I'm not sure. I feel like there's something I could say, but I'm not sure if I should say it, so I'm going to not say anything.
That works for me. But yeah, as Hubert said, still finalizing balance. Things can change, of course, but wanted to at least give you guys kind of an update on where they stand now. And last but not least on the update front, before we go into some questions, I'm going to throw it back to Frisky Fox.
Yes, duels. We're like over halfway through season 8, and it's going to be over at I think on the 29th of this month. I could be wrong, don't quote me. But season 9 is around the corner. And we talked last time about how we were going to share the classes that are going to be boosted in advance so that players have time to prepare and start to create like their new teams, or see if they want to make any purchases on the tavern for stuff that they want to like try to sort of like build. So I'm going to be releasing that in our Discord as an announcement after this AMA, or maybe even during it. If some of the questions aren't for me, then I'll just be like, but yeah, stay tuned for that. And the start date, let's see there. I also have a start date. It's going to be 2 weeks after the other one closes. And I should have had this ready to go. Let's see. Okay, I don't have it ready to go. Dang nabbit. Oh, it's on the wrong editor window. There it is. Okay. That is September 12th of this year. So season 9, September 12th. And I will paste the list of the class boosts, which I also have here. So I'm excited. There'll also hopefully be a couple minor tweaks and things, but there's not going to be anything major. As we've previously noted, most of our current resources and things are spent towards all of the new and exciting things that are happening with PvP and expeditions and stuff like that. So thank you. And that's all from me.
Awesome. Thank you, Sir Fox. Diving into some questions, we're going to start out with one for Hubert. The Gore Axe has a trait of being heavy. Do all two-handed axes, including the loner from the guild, have this trait, or is it specific to the Gore Axe?
Yeah, so for two-handed axes, it is kind of a standard that we've added for them to be slow. So it should be applied for the loner axe that you're using right now. It will definitely be applied to like the gold shop equipment that will be coming for all the axes that are available in there. And yeah, it's just kind of a standard there. I mean, it doesn't mean that we might have some axes that are maybe a bit faster, or even some that are even slower potentially. But in general, I think for most two-handed weapons now, we're looking at kind of having that be kind of a standard thing if it's kind of a heavy weapon.
And similarly, same question for the speed debuff on Bach Knight Mail. Is the speed decrease a unique trait, or do all heavy armors have that quality?
For heavy armor, that is actually specific to that heavy armor specifically, and it was meant to kind of counterbalance the effect that it had to an extent, where you could get extra initiative for blocking. So that is just for that. The other heavy armor won't have it like by default as a general design approach, but that does not to say that it won't happen again.
Perfect. Thank you, Hubert. Let's see. This one, I'm going to ask myself a question. Has the team considered doing airdrops ongoing for people that have staked their jewel in the jeweler? Yes, we have. So one thing that was part of this question is, it doesn't have to be something economy impacting if, it's like a soulbound item or something like that. The first part of that, I'll just say, like, even soulbound stuff is economy impacting. If we put out like a soulbound version of a greater crystal, well, anybody using that doesn't need to buy a greater crystal to use it. So it does still impact the economy. As far as like the ongoing airdrops for the jeweler goes, it is something that we've talked about. It's not something that's off the table, but realistically, anything that we do will be economy impacting. And so, being staked in the jeweler already gives you multiple perks in terms of obviously governance voting, but also, fee sharing, and then power ups are a really big part of that. Of course, we have expeditions tentatively coming out today, which need power ups. So it's not something that we're opposed to, but it's not something that we have plans currently to have ongoing airdrops. Fox, I saw your camera, so I assume you want to talk.
Yes, it's kind of a nice way to raise your hand. Just flip your camera on. But no, I agree with everything you said. And also just sort of wanted to point out that, I think, what was it, a few months ago when we did the layer 0 airdrop, that also like looked at the jeweler. And that's sort of like an easy thing that we can do because we have all that. I actually pulled a ton of analytics and then like a ton of data about the jeweler, and we have a analytics database that basically tracks everybody's balance every single day. And so that made it easy to do some of the other like airdrops that we just did that were like looking retroactively as well. So having that data, it makes it as sort of like a easy and fast go-to if we do things like airdrops and other kinds of like events and like whatever contests that need that data. It's there. So it for sure is like one of the perks of that, along with all the others. And I'm really stoked with that system. So it was very, very useful for the recent airdrops. And also,
Yeah.
I think I pulled like 60 million rows worth of data or something for some of those. It took so long to like make all those things work, but it's really cool having that data there.
Yeah, and I do think it's fair to say, like, when we have opportunities like that, the jeweler is a good place for those. So there's always options. Let's see. I am actually going to take this next question as well, kind of speaking for Beetle Dude, who is not with us today. He's doing some traveling himself. Can we get a simple disable selling this hero toggle? So I'm actually going to ultimately reference this a few times for a couple other questions as well. But the button itself could be simple. However, there has to be somewhere to store that information. And right now, we really don't have off-chain storage. It's all on-chain storage. It is something that we've kind of been building out because of combat. So, when you do that second sign-on stage for combat, essentially what you're doing is like telling our database what OX belongs to your profile. So as off-chain storage expands, things like this do become more options. But at the moment, we just don't have a storage place to save that data. For any of you devs, if I said any of that wrong, please feel free to correct me. But I think I got it right. I hear no corrections. All right. Jumping back.
And it's just semantics. We store tons of off-chain data for our like operations and things, but not for the gameplay. So
yeah, not player data. Or player, yeah. Thank you, Fox. Going back to Hubert here for a second. How many class codices are anticipated to be released by end of year? Which there's two ways to read that question, so I'll let you take it from there.
Okay, yeah. Let's see. So if we take that question to mean like implemented into the combat engine, I would say that I'm hopeful we have at least one more before the end of the year. We have our focus very like occupied with PvP, but I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to squeeze in at least one more class. We'll see. That's going to be dependent on us getting traits and pet combat bonuses done first, which we're just put in front of another class just to have those done since they impact every class. And so yeah, I'll say at least one more. It's hard to say. We can get on a roll and maybe be able to have more than that. But also we want to make sure we're prioritizing all the things that we need to get done for PvP. So don't want to make too big a promise on that front. And if we're talking about just new codices in terms of ones that like classes that don't have any released codices for you to look at and speculate about, we have one that will be releasing very soon here. So there's that, and Workhorse is moving right along to the next advanced class to add a codex for as well. So I'm hopeful that we'll at least have this really soon coming one and one more at least, but I could see us doing even more than that. It just kind of depends on how things go.
Cool. Thank you, sir. Thoughts on a teaser for yellow pet eggs and or gold pet eggs? I'm actually going to kick that one off as well. Realistically, they're just not our priority right now. So while like there is sometimes some work on the background or in the background going on them, honestly, if we start teasing them, it's just going to seem like we're working on them, despite the fact that we can say a million times that we are not working on them. So at this time, not really. So they are definitely not forgotten, but they are not our priority right now. We've got the priority list out. I think everybody knows PvP is a big one. We'll be able to cross expeditions off here shortly, which is great progress. But realistically, until we're like focused on them and making significant progress on them, we talked about it a couple weeks ago where we don't want to tease stuff 6 months in advance or 8 months in advance or whatever the case may be. Like we don't want to do teasers that far out, and realistically, until yellow pets are back in focus, it just doesn't make sense to do teasers for them.
I mean, we'd like to tease everything, but you guys are mean when we do. There are things that and we're in the idea generation phase. It's like, yay, this is really cool. Let's talk about what we're thinking about. And then as we're working through it, like, okay, so to make it best, we have to do A, B, and C. It's like, you didn't say that a year and a half ago when you were thinking about it. So we understand it's kind of hard. Like when we get really excited, we talk about things and they change. That doesn't feel good. So we're trying to over time find the balance, and we're probably always going to be on a little too conservative, a little too loose when we get overexcited. But what we've learned is if we tease something that we know we are not prioritizing right now or in the very near future, it's just not fair. You get too excited, you don't see it progress, and then it changes. So I think with pets, that is something that's a lot of fun, a lot of good art there. It doesn't provide incremental utility, but there's still so many eggs out there to hatch, and we want those to come out, and they will be fun and unique. And when we get to that point, it'll be awesome, but we don't want to mislead you that we're near that point now. So we're, bear with us a little bit on the communication. We're trying to, especially in the last 6 months, make sure these AMAs are full of what we're working on now, all the alpha and the teasing and the brainstorming, and that seemed to work out pretty well. But I think in the past when we come on, we're like 1,000 things are on our mind, but we can only do 5. If we talk about anything other than the 5, it seems to have adverse effects. So we're trying to be a little more cautious.
Yes, it's a constant balancing act. question for you, Hubert. This one's a bit of a throwback for you. There's mentioned in the docs that at some point there will be an inn where you can pay jewels to drastically increase heroes' stamina recovery rate. The question itself is, how does jewel play a role in swifter stamina recovery in the inn? But I'm going to broaden that question to, do we still plan on later having inns and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I guess as far as like, will we still have inns or not? I would say, you know, that was a very early concept, and I think it's still possible that we would do that, but it's going to kind of come down to land functionality, I think. And you know, when we get to focusing on there, then we'll start really defining like what are the types of buildings we want landowners to be able to build, and what functionality do we want to give to that. So I think inns was like, the concept of an inn was one of the ideas that we had, and I still think it's a good one, but we just have to see if it still makes sense once we get to that point. So, and yeah, if we did do it, then, you know, there would be a fee associated with it, and whether it's in Jewel, I think that was written when Jewel was our only power token. So you know, it's possible that it, you know, maybe Crystal or Jade or whatever the power token is on the realm that it's on, or so on. But it's kind of really far out and outside of our focus right now, so it's kind of hard to say anything definitive.
Yes, which I will just add, as far as Jewel playing a role in swifter stamina recovery, not at the end, but it does now with the rapid renewal power up. So you can increase your stamina recovery rate now. All right. Let's see. Any other, or are there plans from the team regarding any future mini games within DFK like duels?
Was that a me question?
It is now, sure.
Oh, okay.
You volunteered.
Let's see. So, I mean, I think it's certainly possible that we could have more mini games in the future. It's not our focus right now. Our focus is very much on PvP. And then, you know, we have other combat content that we want to be building as well. So, you know, I think the majority of our team has, you know, a lot of our focus is just going to be in that direction. But, you know, down the road, it's always possible that we could add another mini game here or there.
Go ahead, Fox.
Yeah. You know, one of the cool things about Web3, and I like to look at like Axie Infinity as a pretty good example that's out there. I think a lot of people are familiar with them. They actually have a lot of like little spin-off or like small like mini games and things, some of which have been built by the community. I think I could be wrong, but you know, that's one of the cool things about Web3 is that other people out there can build things. We've had some for ours. We've had like Arena, and there's been other like crossover things. You know, I think it would be really, really cool to see more and more of those built, not just by us, but also by others out there. And then, you know, like we could showcase those on our like sites and things. And the cool thing is that you have instant access to a player base that would pretty much all probably like want to go check it out. And also you can let them bring their assets with them because they own their assets, and it's on the blockchain and it's an open ledger. So, I mean, I've had like a million ideas for like mini games. I've even started some of them just on the weekends or things, just like for fun. But there's so many things out there you can do with this kind of IP that's just basically owned. Like you guys own your heroes, you know, like you own your assets, and that's such a huge thing out there for this type of stuff. So I think there's a lot of opportunities in the future.
Yeah, when we look at when duels first came out, we were at a point in time when the idea of combat being live, even in a testing environment, was so far away. Yeah, there's so much we had to do. And it would be unfortunate if it required years for there to be something a little bit more playable than the criticism we were getting that like questing alone isn't a game, right? DFK is not a game. So with we're always listening to input, and among that input, there's some things where like there's a way we can address this without sacrificing our primary like priorities. And with duels, you know, it was designed to be a very on-chain heavy and solve some problems like on-chain rewards and other things that we'd have to get to eventually, but now so that we could gather as much information while also being fully playable. Not to the extent of the game that we've seen now unfold, that is a lot more in depth in terms of strategy and real-time actions, but it's been wildly successful. We've learned a lot. I think you guys have enjoyed it. It also paved the way for others to see that, you know, using the raffle ticket program, essentially, launching a mini game can be monetizable, and you're able to use the IP in whatever way you want, whether they're heroes or pets, and create a fun game. DFK Duels is meant to be the example of that. Are we, Kingdom Studios, going to make 20 different mini games of our own rather than one really strong flagship game? Probably not, unless things change very materially in terms of our like ability to put things out and have like a whole mini game sub team, which who knows, in the next bull market, who knows what could happen. But I think the better option is kind of what Fox was hinting to. If you look at old school games that are simple to make, and there's even a lot of platforms that you kind of plug in your IP and launch, you can make like a Frogger with the Bun Bun. You can make some pretty cool pet-based games. You can make like a Tamagotchi type thing where it's pretty simple and fun, and you just use the IP that we have out there for you. So maybe in this market, it's hard to see that vision. Maybe in the last couple of years, it's been hard. But we do hope that in the future there will be teams out there, especially some smaller indie game builders, that might look at DeFi Kingdoms as a platform to build and launch their own games or a subset of existing games on other chains. That's just a possibility for a time different than the one we're in, where we're trying to build and give legs to the flagship game as best as we can that could attract other builders to collaborate with. So it could end up being a tomorrow thing where some, you know, a small team gets together and they say, let's start doing little mini games. And we would fully support those. Or it could be, you know, Coliseum comes out, we have a bunch of success, other big features like travel and others come out, and then down the road it happens. Whenever it happens, we'll welcome it. We hope for it, that to be a part of DeFi Kingdoms. But from our perspective, our excess resources have so many other priorities than additional mini games. Although that would be fun if we just took a year and said, let's build like 10 different mini games. But unfortunately, the flagship game wouldn't progress, and that's our primary focus.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you guys. Jumping over to Magnus for a second. Heroes that are on expeditions, are you able to list for rent for summonings? And are you able to duel with them?
Yeah, so this is a pretty quick one to answer. The answer to both is yes. It's going to be the same restrictions, whether it's an expedition or a quest. So if you can do it on questing or while you're questing, you can also do it while you're on an expedition as well.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Let's see. Gonna jump this one over to Dreamer to kick off. Are there any plans to change the UI with the upcoming PvP launch?
I'll invite anybody else to add to this as well. I interpret this question a few different ways. One is the obvious way of like, will PvP have its own like landing page, UI, realm, and everything? I think many of us have seen the teased portions in our like trailer to show like the Coliseum coming out of the ocean with islands around it and different backgrounds. So that user interface will be unique to Coliseum. There will be unique interiors, unique music and everything. A lot of that's out there. A lot of it hasn't been shown as well. Very excited about that. Another way to interpret this question is there going to be an alternative user interface for a gamer or for somebody coming in that just wants to play the game to make it simple? And whether or not that was the intention of the question, I interpret it that way because that's been a big topic of discussion. The main discussion is feedback that we have is as we increase the amount of features in the game, each feature made in a point in time that is different from the previous one, to a new player can be quite daunting. We can solve this by tutorials. We can solve this by micro-influencers in the community putting out awesome content like you all do. We can solve it in a number of different ways. One of those ways is to consider the different people coming for different reasons and trying to cater to them for their reasons. So if you're coming in and just trying to access the gamified DeFi stuff, or you want to participate in deep like end game economy stuff with summoning and dark summoning and min maxing, or if you're coming in just because you want to get some heroes and hop in the Coliseum, eventually we'll have to think through all these different target audiences and make sure there's a safe and focused area for them to operate in. Now it's likely a problem long term for us to get to. We can break down these barriers in different ways, but I personally would love to see a little bit more of a streamlined flow for those that only want to play the game, that only want very simplicity in the onboarding process, cutting out everything they don't need to know day one, but have it form as a hook to dive into the full realms, dive into the deep strategy. So that's something we're thinking of when we get to actually implementing something. Is a little less clear because we can't stop all of our development to get to that. But I would say as PvP progresses, as phase 1 comes out, we're in phase 2, sometime in the next year, I would like to see some improvements on the onboarding process and experience for new and returning players. It just might come in different forms. And we're discussing currently what some of those would be in terms of cost to build and how effective they would be on the other side. So important topic, 2 ways to answer that question. Hopefully those 2 answers suffice. I don't know if anybody has anything to add.
Oh, okay. Fox looked like he was thinking, so I was waiting a second.
I don't know if I should say stuff. I always get in trouble for saying too much. But yeah, it is definitely on our
You
minds.
probably shouldn't. If there's a voice inside of you that says, maybe should I say this? It's probably a don't say it.
Exactly. I'll just say, it's a thing that we talk about.
Awesome. Thank you. Jumping back to Magnus for a second, can we talk about the Synapse Hero Bridge and any thoughts on looking for alternatives, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, sure thing. So first off, I'll say we're in constant communication with Synapse internally regarding any stuck hero or equipment bridge transactions. Just for context, one of the reasons there's usually a delay in getting those resolved is that on the Synapse side of things, they need to be manually unstuck due to kind of like some of the design constraints around gas and things like that as part of the messaging protocol. They have mentioned that they're working on a V2 version of the messaging protocol, and I've put in requests pretty much anytime I talk to them for a decentralized message replay feature that some other messaging protocols have. Last I've heard, they're still working on that V2 version, and I think they're going to have like some upgrade process we can go through to get that converted over. But that will greatly improve things once that's out. But I haven't had any updates to share on that yet. As most of you know, we use Layer 0 V1 currently for our item bridge, and that does have the decentralized replay feature. For the DFK to Metis and Klaytn to Metis bridges to enable PvP, we're planning to use the recently released Layer 0 V2 for those bridges, which does have that decentralized replay feature, and they've also made a ton of like under the hood improvements to make it easier to launch on different chains and whatnot, just kind of at the infrastructure level, as well as security things. So we're going to be launching with that on for PvP, and then there may be some changes that come to some of our other bridges as a result of that, but all that's kind of TBD.
Go ahead, Fox.
I'll just add a comment here too. But yeah, it's, I like Synapse. They are like really good at their main stuff that they do. For PvP, we were faced with the prospect of having to write a lot of new things for the bridging, just because of the way that heroes will actually be stored on chain. There's a lot of efficiencies that we've added, specifically for like Metis, and it's really like pushed us to say, okay, here's what we've learned, and let's see if we can make it even better for this one. So we were faced with the prospect of sort of like rewriting a lot of our bridge stuff for heroes anyways. And we're like, hey, this could be a good opportunity for us to explore like using layer 0 and some of their new stuff that they built into the V2 protocol. So we spoke with some of their team and got them to bring that to our chain on like the mainnet and on testnet. And always like really nice to work with them and their team, and rewrote a lot of that to do that. So it's sort of an experiment, but it's been really cool, really interesting so far. We're always trying to like really push that envelope with the cross-chain sort of world. As all of you know, we have like our app is on multiple chains, and we have to try to keep those in sync. So layer 0 V2 for the hero bridge, and it's going to be really interesting and like really cool to see how that works out.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. Going back to Hubert for a few minutes here, so don't go anywhere. Thoughts on having, and the example is pets, but it could apply to other equipment as well. So currently, if you go to equip, you have to go to the hero first and then select the equipment. Any thoughts on having the opposite of that also be possible? So you could be looking at a pet and say, I want to equip this pet, and then pull up the hero screen from there.
Yeah, I really like that idea. In general, I like having there being, I guess, context for anything you're doing in the game. Like if you're wanting to deal with equipment and equip it, being able to, if you're looking at the equipment first, being able to just select it and then select the hero, I think would be a great addition. And just kind of in general, there's a lot of things we've been adding lately to just give you access to other parts of the game more simply from the menu you're on. Like you're able to, if you're like missing a rune or something, you can quick buy just by clicking on it right there on the screen in most places. And just kind of in general, we're trying to close all the gaps where there are places that we could do things like that and have there be kind of cross-referencing happening more. So I definitely like that idea, and I definitely think it belongs on Beetle's list. And that does, when that gets addressed will be hard to say. But Zip's also is always listening, and he tends to pull things off the list sometimes. So we'll see when that happens.
All the lists. Sticking with you, Hubert, with pet combat bonuses coming at some point and traits, as we discussed earlier, also coming, I imagine heroes will become stronger relative to the current PvE encounters. When such features go live, do we plan to adjust the difficulty of the void hunts?
It's possible. I think right now, I think just yesterday I was, double checking with Sashay on his feelings about if we need to increase the difficulty with the traits coming soonish. And we decided at least for this, we're going to keep it as is. But we'll keep watching and seeing how things go. And it's always possible we could kind of tweak things a bit. Once kind of people have gotten their hands on it and we've seen kind of more widespread usage. And then when it comes to like pet combat bonuses as well, we'll have to see. They are kind of designed to not be like an end all be all. If you have this this pet combat bonus, you're going to be able to always win. Like we try to just make them balanced and additive and help improve your experience and your strategy, but not make it just a win button. So I think as long as we keep that balance pretty solid and tight, I mean, you still have to take an action to do it. I think it is possible we won't need to make adjustments, but we'll see. If we need to, we will.
Cool. When looking at the Squire Sword, for example, it has a dex requirement of 15. What happens if you don't meet that requirement, and how much of a lift would it be to show the temporary Squire's equipment on the hero paper doll view in hunts?
Let's see. So for the second part of that question, I will just say that it probably isn't that big of a lift, but we're also not that far away from just being done with the temporary equipment. So I don't think we're going to spend the time to do that because soon the Squire's equipment will be, I mean, I say soon, that's a relative soon. But around the time that PvP first releases, we should also have that equipment available. So then this, that part won't really matter as much about the showing the temporary. So anyway, probably won't be doing that. On the first part of that question, if you don't meet your dex requirement on the sword, you can still equip it. It just means that your accuracy is going to be below the base accuracy of the weapon, depending on how far away your dex is from it. So I think that weapon's base accuracy is 90% if you're at 15. So if you're like at 14, I think it's like 88% or 87. And then it drops down pretty quick if your dexterity is lower than the requirement. So not really recommended, but you could do it.
Another one for you, Hewart. Can we use Divine Essence to reset hero summons? Pretty please.
Currently not on the plan, but some things are always possible, I guess.
Would it be interesting to have unique special pets that drop only from void hunts, or maybe void eggs that can be hatched the same way other eggs can?
I mean, with us still having like yellow and gold eggs pending, I don't know that it would really be a good idea for us to be adding even more eggs on top of that. I mean, it's possible, and it could be interesting to do that, but I don't see us doing that with everything else we have going on.
Thank you. Give you a break for just a minute. Actually, a couple that I am going to speak for Beetle again, which is my favorite thing to do. A function to save wallets as contacts to not always have to manually paste in wallet addresses, such as at the barkeep. Referring to my previous answer about storage. So again, as we build off like player specific off-chain storage, that could become more of a viable option. But right now, there just isn't really a place for that to live, which also applies to the first half of the next question. Preset filtering for heroes is basically that same thing, where we need the off-chain per player storage to link to your profile, because right now it would basically store like in your browser, and then you clear your cache and it's gone. So that's not super helpful as a solution. The second part of that question was having predefined ones for certain filtering and like separate buttons for basic classes, advanced classes, basic abilities, advanced abilities, that kind of thing. That one actually I happen to know is on Dr. Zipper's list. So again, a lot of stuff going on. Not saying that we're going to get to it right away, but I know that is something that we talked about. Actually, it came up in Discord a couple weeks ago, and Zip was talking about it a little bit. So that is one that could be interesting. Oh God, he heard me. We're going to keep moving along now that Zip is here. Jumping over back to Dreamer for a second. With Klaytn merger coming up and the launch of Kaya, kind of a few part question here. Any updates? Are we expecting to need to like relaunch Serendale? Should players bridge their heroes to Crystal Vale to keep them safe? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so I will put a disclaimer out there before responding. We don't control what they will ultimately do, but we can relay what they've told us so far. We've definitely been in a holding pattern for a while now with Klaytn, or the to-be launched Kaya. And what we know is that their current plans are pretty much, of all the options, the least disruptive for anybody currently on Klaytn. It appears like they're going to be using Klaytn as the core chain technology, and the partnering chain Finchia migrating to that chain with a rebrand of token and maybe some adjustments to the underlying code that has been communicated would not require a relaunch of all contracts. Now, their view is going to be different from ours because whatever they decide to do, once it's in testing and we review it, we might find that for our very complex offering, it will require something. But at least with what we know now, we don't anticipate that. Hopefully, it'll be quite seamless or at least minimize the pain. But it does not appear to be a full redeployment of everything on a complete new chain, a chain ID, and figuring out bridges from old chain to new and all that madness. It seems like what we've been told so far is that it should be quite easy for us to operate in the to be rebranded and launched Kaya product. But again, the disclaimer is this is only what we know. If tomorrow it came out and we're like, oh man, they're doing A, B, and C, actually, now we have to change, we will update you. But that's as best as we can answer the question, which is really for another team. We're takers of what they decide to do, and they do consider our input and our requests, which we've been very vocal about, as it would be quite disruptive to have to kind of redo and relaunch everything. If we were going that direction, there would likely be focus around safety. I think the question of should we move everything off to keep it safe? I don't think the lack of safety is a concern right now. I think it's more like they wouldn't just abruptly be like off. But I think it's more the complexity and the time required for us to migrate is what we're concerned with. And as of right now, it doesn't look like that's a thing. But Fox, anything to add there? I know that we asked a lot of questions a few months ago and we got these answers. Did you want to correct or add anything to my comments?
No, that's exactly right. Like we asked all these exact same questions as what like you guys are asking, I don't know, 6 months ago or something when they like were first talking about it. And we're telling you guys what they told us. We always are trying to look ahead for these types of things. And so as things change, if they change, we'll for sure let you guys know as soon as we can. But for now, I'm not really like I would say there's no current need for you to do anything with the existing plans as they are. So they've tried to make it be as seamless as possible for their users and for the apps that are on there. And obviously, as things change, we'll let you know.
So even though we're all waiting, I'm really excited for when they are ready because the partnership is particularly interesting because of the parent company of Finchia, if that's the right way. I don't know their exact structure, but they're very well connected to a messaging app that is popular in Japan called Line, who has some interesting IP, could be some collaboration options in the future, maybe with some visages, maybe with messaging, who knows, sky's the limit. But they're trying to figure out their base product and merger, after which there's an access to the world that consumes RPG games that is moving closer to being like comfortable with crypto, and it could be a good long-term play. Initially, a big part of the decision was we expand our exposure to a user base and a team completely outside of what's in the direct scope of Avalanche and not an immediate competitor. Then Klaytn had a number of things happen and we've been kind of waiting, but I am confident that with this merger, if it goes well and the partnerships that they have, maybe that long-term marketing play could come to fruition with this through the line connection, through the geographical focus of Japan and Vietnam, who have traditionally been big in the gaming space as well as the play-to-earn space. So fingers crossed, hoping for that. We have reduced costs a ton on Sarandale with working with the Klaytn teams, primarily on RPCs and a few others. So would be great to start building a little bit more there when some of this gets a little bit more clear.
Thank you. Which, speaking of, we did an announcement in a tweet, but if you've not updated your Sarandale RPC URL, please do so. Jumping back to Hubert, thoughts on being able to delegate power-ups between wallets, and if so, any thoughts on when?
Yeah, so this is something that we were talking about doing. We've talked about this in the past, especially when we were first integrating Halliday, we were looking at, if people wanted to switch wallets, but they have their Jewel locked up, it makes it a little bit difficult to do that. So yeah, I think in general we have kind of a concept of delegation that we're comfortable with. As far as like when we would actually focus on doing that, though, that's harder to say. I keep saying our focus is on PvP, and it really very much is. We have a lot of things that we want to make sure we accomplish. So little doing a delegation, like the effort to make the delegation work, I think would not be trivial. So it's kind of hard to say that would be something that we would do soon.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Would it be possible and or desirable in combat to add a X% chance to kill when targeting, similarly to how accuracy works, considering like crit chances, block chances, all of that stuff, as well as potentially a chance to apply status effect?
So that second one, the chance to apply status effects one, is one that I have asked for and would like us to eventually have for sure. The first one of like kill chance, I guess I'm less interested in like prioritizing something like that. I mean, we could, and yeah, I mean, we could figure out what like the max possible damage would be and be able to like figure out the math for that. But it may make the confirmation window, like if we have that plus the accuracy plus like potential status effects on there, it could get a little bit busy. So like to reduce busyness, I would say probably the chance to kill one would be what I would remove from the list, like from what's there, if we were to do that. So, but yeah, the second one for sure, a chance to do status effects, I think that would be really useful, especially now that we're getting close to traits being out, which have more resistances in them for resistance to specific status effects. And just armor and with PvP coming and everything, there's armor accessories, various things that also increase resistances. So without showing it in that preview screen, it will become a little bit harder to keep track of, should I be trying to hit this specific hero with this thing? So, I'd like to make that as easy as we can. So that's definitely something I'd want to keep pushing and prioritizing. But yeah, the other one, not so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Going to try to snag a couple more questions before we wrap up. Real quick one from chat, actually related to expeditions. Do quick study and rapid renewal work in expeditions?
They sure do. There's a whole bunch of code associated with that.
Awesome. Thank you. This next one might be our last one, depending on how long we talk about it. But essentially, thoughts from the tokenomics side of the impact of expeditions to material supply. I will say we talked about this a pretty good amount in the expedition stream. So I don't think we necessarily have to take a very long time to talk about it again here. That stream is on our YouTube, so anybody who's interested can reference it there as well. But I'll kick it off and then hand over to Hubert, and if anybody else wants to add. The biggest thing is like, aside from, there is a gain in efficiency, yes. But aside from that, like, there's no difference in what can be produced through expeditions versus what could have been produced without them. Is there the possibility that heroes that aren't currently questing start questing through expeditions? Of course. Hopefully some do, but that it doesn't change the fact that if they just were questing today, they would still be getting those same materials. But in fact, they're actually going to be like paying in a sense for getting those materials, because expeditions requires a power up and has the per stamina fee. So it's not really introducing the potential for material gain that wasn't already there. It's offering an efficient way to do it, but at a premium. So I'll stop there. Hubert, if you want to add anything, and then if anybody else does, feel free.
Yeah, I think that was really well said. we could potentially see a lot more heroes just questing in general because of expeditions coming out. And if we do, then that would also mean that there would be a potential increase in resources being released as well. But I'm not too concerned about it right at the moment, especially with some of the things we're working on with PvP. On Metis, there won't be any questing over there. So if you have heroes over there, they won't be questing anyway. And we're trying to make sure that we have a pretty engaging experience over there. So I think some heroes will be preoccupied with PvP. And as we just get further into the game and like developing some of our core features, I think there will also be other changes that will just make that questing experience a little bit more just like a smaller part of the whole of the game. And it's always possible we could adjust things if we need to. We'll definitely watch and see how the market changes and what expeditions what that impact is. But I think because there is a fee though, I think that does kind of help with any concerns with value, because it just adds another variable into the calculus of is it worth me doing it? Should I do this? And what are my motivations for doing it? So I don't have anything else to say on that one.
I have something. I like we're kind of short on time, but I was going to say the same thing. Like there's more and more things for heroes to do, especially once we have some of these like new releases out. Over at the Coliseum, there's going to be a lot. There's other systems that we're working on that will use heroes. So it's kind of like MMORPGs where you've got so many different things you could be doing, and you only have your certain amount of time to do those things. So some people will be doing this thing, some people will be doing this thing, and it all forms just this giant economy that has like the suppliers and the consumers, and so I'm excited as more and more of those things get built out. It just really makes it such a much more like robust economy system there. So that's all I'll say about that for now.
Awesome. Yeah. Also important to note, we've referenced a couple times other use cases for heroes. So that all plays into Fox's point as well. So we are going to stop questions there as we are reaching the top of the hour. Anything that we did not get to this week, we will get to next week. I know there's a couple that we have not hit, which is fine. So make sure you tune in next week because they'll be up at the top of the list. So to wrap us up, I will just say, as always, thank you to everybody who has taken the time up here to answer questions, everybody who is listening to this video now and will listen to it later. And thank you to everybody who submits questions for us to answer. You can submit your questions at talk.defikingdoms.com or in the AMA channels or AMA questions channel in our Discord. So keep the questions coming so that we can keep answering them, because otherwise it would be a really quiet AMA. But really appreciate everybody hopping up here to take the time to answer some questions as well. We'll do a quick around the horn, and then we'll let Fox bullish us because he hasn't been in an AMA for a few weeks, so it'll be good to hear that. So just going to go in the order that I see on screen. Winston, any final comments?
Hey, super happy for everybody to come check us out and listen to it today, and I think we're really excited about Expeditions coming up. It's going to be great. Looking forward to hearing what you guys think about that. So thanks again for hanging out with us, and look forward to Expeditions.
Thank you, Winston. Hubert?
Not too much more to add. I'm very excited to get Expeditions across the finish line here. Just a reminder that we do have one feature that we are leaving out, which is auto level ups. So that will be something that we are going to do eventually after this point. So there's one more power up, one more fun feature that'll come with that. It just might be a while because we're going to be, all hands on deck on PvP. Very excited also to just be able to, have pretty much our whole team focused on getting PvP across the finish line. There's a lot of work going on into that, as kind of keep repeating every week, but there really is, and I'm really very excited to get that into you guys' hands. That's all I'll say for now.
Thank you, Hubert. Dreamer?
Man, my mouse is so
There's a
annoying.
lot. Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Just double clicks. I've tried everything. I think I just need a new mouse. Anyway, I will echo everybody's comments already, but I won't repeat that. I'm excited for Expeditions because we all are. We know we are. It's going to be awesome because Expeditions frees up time to get in there and hunt, and more specifically, fight each other in the Coliseum. There are still some major features we haven't shared with you guys, simply because we want it to be closer to it actually coming out. But man, Coliseum is going to be sick. Not only for us that like the game, but it'll probably be our potential catalyst that has been most powerful to establish ourselves as an innovative game in the space that's pushed the technology not only from like tokenization perspective, economy perspective, gameplay perspective, fun perspective, but beyond that. We really want to attract those that are reviewing games and streaming games and creating a business for themselves to talk about what's out there. But there's not a lot of products really that cause people to stream consistently and view it and play it. This competitive environment that will be fueled with rewards, both from us, our partners, and from others externally, it has a ton of potential to draw a lot of people in, to bring people back and have eyes on it. So we're taking our time in the design, not only of the play experience for you all, the onboard experience for new players, but beyond that as well. So there is more to come, and we're thinking bigger than just you can fight each other. So I am very excited about that, and the Expeditions release paves the way for that, so that all of you can continue to benefit from your large legions that you've amassed and will continue to, while also having time to make your smaller legions to compete and fight for glory. So very bullish, very excited, and thank you for all the questions in this AMA.
Thank you, Dreamer. Magnus, any final thoughts?
Yeah, sure thing. So thanks for being here, everybody. So now that the contract side of Expeditions is all deployed, I'm full steam ahead on PvP. So excited to just be able to put the blinders on and get to coding on that. We're doing some pretty crazy stuff on chain to be good stewards of the gas on Metis. So yeah, we're really like compressing things and taking a lot of the lessons we've learned the last few years and applying that all into a really cool product on Metis. So yeah, looking forward to dive in there, and yeah, just excited to get Expeditions out.
Thank you, thank you. And last but not least, Fox.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really, really cool. And I am excited about Expeditions, and I'll say it. But mostly because it's been just this huge undertaking that the IA have done a little bit for, but most of which has been other people. You know, Magnus has just been this amazing like MVP. There's 55,000 lines of like new code introduced into our code base with this, and like 135 commits, and it's just a huge undertaking. That's just on the smart contract side. There's a ton on the like interface and like API. There's just a lot of work that have been put into this all across the board. Winston is amazing with his QA things. He actually just this morning he found like one little last thing. You know, like there's just all kinds of things, and it's just a huge effort. And Hubert, of course, like the mastermind and back of all the math, and it's really excited to be like, I think today is fingers crossed the day, you know. So I'm stoked about that. I have a lot of heroes. I don't always have a lot of time to actually quest them because I'm actually like writing code and stuff, but I'm gonna definitely use it. And I'm super excited about the upcoming stuff too with PvP, which I'm going to be involved with as well. So I'm super just excited about that stuff in general. Just this space, this team, we're in the right place at the right time. And the stuff we're building, like the actual tech, is always like bleeding edge. Like we're always trying to like push the envelope there and try things that haven't been done before. And that's what it's all about, trying to find those really good partners out there that have that same vision, that same like mentality, and we're here for it. So yeah, excited to be a part of it, and just want to say bullish for all of it. So thanks for coming. Thanks for listening.
Bullish.
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 Bullish. Thanks, everybody.
See y'all next week.
DeFi Kingdoms, where you can summon heroes, trade with other players, quest, and fight challenging enemies in a fantasy world brought to life in pixel art animation.